Can everybody hear me? First of all, I want to start something new because I think this will help. Today is April 12th, 2017, and this is our meeting. No, 11. This is April, so I got 11 written here. I don't know why it said 12. If I do this, when I do the videos, at least I know what month is and what year. So April 11th, 2017. Lady, what would I do without you? Yesterday was my brother's birthday, so I should have done that. I'd like to lead off the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Martin, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
For those who don't know me, maybe I got introduced to her. My name is Jerry Bybee. I'm president of the Houston County Historic Society. One of the first things I want to bring up is dues are due. And they're due for the 2017 year. They go from January to January. And the dues are $10 individual or family, $50 for a lifetime, which mainly pays for the emails that we send out, for the minutes when we have the programs and everything. So the dues are due, and if you want to pay tonight or if you want to send her a check, see Miss Betty, because she does a real good job of taking care of this, and I'm so proud that we have her. Okay, did everybody get their minutes that's on the list, either through snail mail, which is U.S. postage, or email? If anybody didn't, would you raise your hand? Okay, good. Great job, Vanetta. So proud of you and so glad you're with us too. Okay, one thing I need to bring up to take care of some business for the Historic Society. The donation from the county that we receive every year. We've talked it over. I talked it over with a couple members, and I think we're going to forego it and ask the county not to include us since they're having financial trouble. And we have no projects to work on right now. And we do have some money in our banking account, so we're going to write up a letter, Miss Betty. We need to take a vote with the board members. Everybody in favor, if we're going it, would you please say aye? Everybody opposed to it? Okay, well, so pass.
I need a motion and a
Oh,
second.
I'm sorry.
So you're making a motion?
Anna?
No, I don't think he can.
President,
I do.
Betty, can
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Pick one.
Okay. Now, everybody in favor? I like this part. It's a good day. Everybody in favor say aye again, please. Aye. Everybody opposed? All right. Thank you. Thank you all.
I will include in the letter, this needs to go in the minutes, that if in the future we have a project that is beyond our financial balance, that we may ask to be reinstated with the county, so we at least leave the door open.
So like when we get the Sam Houston statue built out there in front of the courthouse or something like that?
Oh, bless your heart.
What'd you say? Donation?
I blessed your heart.
Okay, our next meeting, let me put this out to us right now, is May 12th. That's where I got my 12 from. And it's at 6 p.m. and it's at the McCampbell's, and we're having our annual picnic out there. And the speaker is Vanetta.
You have her name down? It's Lori, I don't know her last name.
Lori Pardue Coe.
Yes, she is a Native American descent, and she is a wise woman. She's one of the very unusual for a woman to be. What was that?
He thought all women were.
Who said that?
It says,
Put that in the minutes.
it says tribal wisdom of the elders.
Yes.
Is that what the program's
It's
on?
very unusual for a woman to be a wise woman. They have wise men, but she's a wise woman.
If you haven't been out there, I'll tell you what, I would pay to go out there. For the,
Okay.
Okay.
Al will accept any donations.
It's all right with me.
Oh, I did want to say, yeah, Laura, I told her we don't pay our speakers, we might pay her mileage, because she does, I think she lives in Central. She said she'd just bring a donation jar, so
All right. And,
it may
okay.
be empty when she leaves, but.
Now, we have a speaker for June, but we don't have one right now for July and August. Is that correct, Vanessa? Okay, so if anybody wants to do a program, now's the time to stand up. I mean, even if you collect comic books or something like that, I mean.
Well, I keep saying Vanetta has been all over the world. She can put some nice programs together for
I'll
us.
put her down for July and August.
Do it too.
Which one you gonna do, Vanessa?
I'll do May.
It's July or August. You want us to vote on it? That way we'll just not. All right, that's a good, thank you, Bob, that's a good choice right there. Is there any new business that we need, well, we need small business first. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Betty. I'm 2 steps ahead of me. I've been that way all day. It's been that kind of day. I'd like
I'm
to,
used to being
all right.
left out, poor people me.
I need a treasury report.
Okay. Our balance at the end of December was $1,122.04 that was in the checking account. Our income since then has been $640.34. Our expenses were $351.91. We have a balance in the checking account of $1,410.47. And I didn't even write down the others, but they're the same.
Okay.
And the income was the county did give us in January the $500. We collected $140 in dues and $34 in interest. Our expenses were, I had to make the annual report to the state, which was $20, $30 for DVDs, $301.91 for mailing supplies. So that left a balance of $1,410.47 in the checking.
Thank you so much, Ms. Betty. Our 401, do we have to renew that this year?
We don't
I mean,
have
501. The
We
one
don't
that,
have a
that
501, you mean a 501?
yes, ma'am, the one Rebecca did for us. We don't need to?
No, I
All
don't
you
think
do
we
is
have.
do your annual report, that's it.
I did the annual report to the state. We have to do that every year.
Okay, that's not the same as what we have over at the
This
library.
is a state thing that I have to do every year.
The 990, you're talking about the 990.
The 990 I have to do every year also, but that's federal.
Okay, is there a fee on that, or?
Not on that, but there is on
I
one on
don't
the
know
state.
why, but I was thinking on one, the library, that there was one.
There was no fee on it.
Okay,
The one on the state, there is a $20 fee, unless we change our registered agent. If you change your registered agent or change their address, the fee's $40.
okay. All right. Somebody wanted to say something. Oh, Melissa, yeah, okay, Melissa wanted a few minutes, so.
Looking around, I think everybody knows me, but I'm Melissa Barker. I'm the Houston County Archivist, and I am so excited to be here tonight to give you this report. First of all, I'm excited for Miss Susan to speak tonight. I can't wait to hear what she's got to say. But it's been very, very exciting in the archives the last month, I guess. We've had several documents and records donations that I'm really excited about. Miss Elizabeth Martin donated several music books that belong to the Douglas and Martin family, and they're just precious. I just love them, and so I thank her for that. Mr. Teddy Howell, if you all know Mr. Teddy Howell, his father was Harold Howell, and he had called me, or actually his wife called me, and said, we found some things in Mr. Harold Howell's house. Do you want them? And I'm like, yeah. So he brought them to me, and they were actually original 1960 election return books for the county. So I was very excited to get those. Miss Sandra Baggett made a wonderful donation on behalf of her and her husband of Houston County High School boys basketball score books, original score books from basketball. They date from 1950, go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
they're really, I mean, I just got permission to donate them. I got them
to do some research for the book I was working on for LC. And there was some girls in there. and some
There's
boys.
one book of junior varsity
There's a
girls.
whole lot missing, and they just were stuck in a box in the room where the washer and dryer were, and were not being taken care of at all, and I couldn't stand it, so I got permission to donate them, and, you know, I thought if I needed to do any more research, I could go down there and see if you already did that.
They date from 1957 to 1979, and as I was cataloging them, as I always do, I go through each and every book that's ever donated. I went through all the music books, looking for any pieces of paper, scraps of paper, anything that was stuck in there. Well, I got to looking at this book, and at the bottom it has the players' names, who they played, score, everything. So if you have ancestors, 57, family members, or you yourself, if you're here, if you played basketball during that time, your name might be in here. However, I was looking through this, trying to find one, and I found a very interesting name that I recognized at the bottom of the page. I gotta find one. And where is it? Anyway, he was listed as the scorer. And let me find one. I found him the other day. Don't tell me I brought the wrong book. There's a gentleman by the name of Jerry Fazell. It's listed at, here's one. I knew I'd find it. And I don't know if it's our Jerry Fazell. He's over there going. This one's dated 1957-58. And his name is listed at the bottom as the scorer. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to leave what I brought out.
Is that what happened to your shoulder? You've been playing basketball.
And the last item that, not the last item. Many of you might know Barbara Knight Whitaker from here, and her husband, Pat Whitaker. They live in Florida now, and she's a writer. She's actually written a book called Kitty's War. She's donated a copy to the archives. It's not about any kind of local history or people, but it's a very neat book. But she called me the week of Irish Week. They were coming to Irish Week, and she told me she was bringing me a surprise from Florida. And I said, oh good, a little souvenir, something from Florida. And her husband walk in, and she's carrying this plain brown paper sack. And I'm thinking, okay, what's in there? Well, of course, she talks and talks, love her to death. And I'm thinking, what's in that bag? What's in that bag? This is what was in that bag. This is a photo album that's over 100 years old. Now, I'm going to tell you the story she told me. She says that it has nothing to do with her family, but I kind of beg to differ with her a little bit once I looked at it. Her grandmother, I believe it's her grandmother, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, bought the Central Hotel in 1921, or took it over to operate it. One or the other or both. And the story is that when they went into the hotel to take it over, they found this photograph book in the hotel. And these pictures are dated early 1900, 1908, that kind of early. And so I'm going to put it out for y'all to look at. And she just donated it to the archives. There's a picture in here. Yeah.
What hotel?
The Central Hotel.
The Central.
Yes. There's a picture, there's photographs in here that, they put the photographer's name on there. There's one from Pennsylvania, there's a couple from New York, but there's 3 or 4 that are E.E. Collison photographs. There's one in here for Latham Photography that says Erin, Cumberland City, so he was a photographer here. There's another one that's, I think it's Casey or Clyce, K-L-Y-C-E, of Erin, that was a photographer here. But there's one photograph in here that I love because it's a lady and she's holding an absolutely giant snake. And there's a name on it, and I've tried looking her up to see if she was in the circus or something. Her name is Minnie Viola, or Voila, So I'm gonna put this up too for y'all to look at. And the last donation I want to talk about, which is awesome, I'm so excited about this. It's not even a donation, it's more of a records transfer because it's coming from another department in the county. We are receiving the Board of Education minutes that date back to 1895 up to about 1960. We are also receiving about 16 boxes of loose documents and records from the Board of Education that date back, so far I've seen, back to 1930s. No student records or anything like that. These are all receipts, invoices, correspondence. If we want to document the schools before consolidation, these are going to be absolutely wonderful records because they talk about all of the schools and all kinds of situations. I saw names of schools that I had never seen before in Houston County. So Pat Davis has spearheaded that records transfer. She's actually retiring at the end of June, and she is helping with that. One of the things that I found interesting is I've been looking through these records. I've not been able to do anything in the archives because I've been looking through these records. And I found an invoice from the Houston County Times, a newspaper that we had here in the county, where they printed 2,000 report cards. So the newspaper used to print the report cards. In one of the minute books, I found this. Now the minute book is dated 1895 to 1902. That's how far back the minute books go. This is what is called the handbill. It's an advertisement. And it's for a jeweler, the Overback Jewelry Company, was coming to Erin to bring their handsome line of goods to, it says Mitchum and Kirk's drugstore. So I'm guessing that's two separate, because I don't think Mitchum's ever associated with another name. I don't think so. But this is pretty rare because usually handbills are thrown away because they're advertisements. So that's pretty neat. The last thing, and I'll be done, I'm going to read you this real short letter. I'm not going to tell you who it's from. I'll tell you that at the end. This is dated June the 9th, 1934, and it's to Superintendent D.J. McCulley of Erin. He was the superintendent at the time. It says, Dear Mr. McCulley, Congressman Gordon Browning has requested me to manage his campaign for United States Senator. Captain Browning has been our fellow worker, he having taught school for some time. I'm sure you remember his brother, County Superintendent F.L. Browning, who was on the Educational Commission. I hope you can see fit to lend your assistance and support to the campaign. I would like to have a letter from you, which will be treated as very confidential, analyzing the condition and his prospects in your county. I invite and request you to visit campaign headquarters in Nashville. Fraternally yours, Albert Gore, which would have been Albert Gore Sr. His letterhead says, Albert Gore, Superintendent, Smith County Schools, Carthage, Tennessee. I did not know he was a superintendent of schools. So this was in our school board records because it was sent to our superintendent. It has nothing to do with any of our schools, but I thought it was an awesome letter. Thank you very much, and please donate your records to the archives because we are collecting for one day to have an archives and museum in Houston County, and we can't do that unless we have records and memorabilia and artifacts.
Thank you, Melissa.
I got one more thing to bring up before we bring down the speaker. Benetta, we're trying to finish up the brick project. We got Paul here with us too, so he might know a little bit on it. But can you do a little bit of a report on that, or let us know where we're standing?
We are a few bricks shy of a load.
See, it's just not me tonight.
We finished the brick walk up to to finish out the entrance to the park. And I've got 11 bricks orders that I have to put in. I need 15 to do a full order, but we just know we don't have enough to finish up. Even with the slab that the city is purchasing, some of these few brick orders, if y'all pass the word. I'm not sure when they're gonna get done. I haven't touched base with the Baggett boys. I'm trying to get them together and that has to work. So that's all it is. Yeah, do brick short.
How much are the bricks?
Oh, the bricks are $75. And the good news is, Dixon Brick Company or Dixon Memorial, they can do more than the 2 lines. And they can get more letters than, when we originally, this project started in the 80s, is that when it started? Yeah. Okay, they could only do 2 lines, 20 characters or something like that. Dixon Memorial, 17? Okay. Whatever's on the order form is what I just kept, so big deal. You find that Dixon can do more. They can do more lines, they can do more letters per line.
Anybody else got anything they want to bring up before we introduce our speaker? This lady, she impresses me. She's a really sweet lady. I've known her for a little bit of time, ever since she hit my car. She come to me and she said, "Don't tell my husband." And I kept trying to blackmail her, but finally she just went out and told him. But no, she is a sweet lady, and I'm so glad we got her here tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Miss Susan Wiltshire.
Well, good evening. As I was thinking about this occasion, I found myself wondering, what can we do in this county to honor Sam Houston? I thought maybe we could have a little display somewhere and, maybe. And then Jerry Bobby comes up here and says, and then we'll have our statue of Sam Houston in front of the county courthouse. So please consider my remarks tonight the opening salvo of a campaign.
How about we put you in charge of the statue for Sam Houston?
I could do that. I would do that. And I hope before my remarks are over, you will see one and will contribute significantly to this project. When we bought our farm in eastern Houston County in 1973, I began to be curious about the connection of Sam Houston with Houston County. And I asked around. I kept asking. I asked 73, what is this, 2017, for over 40 years. How did this county come to be named for Sam Houston? Nobody knew. I even asked, are you ready, Miss Nina Finley, and she didn't know. And so, with my feathers drooping, I set out to find out more about Sam Houston, and I soon realized that they did not teach me in Texas history the things that became most important to me as I learned them later, and that is that Houston opposed slavery and opposed the secession of Texas from the Confederacy. I don't know why they just didn't tell us that in Texas history in the 50s, but I'm getting ideas now about why they didn't. So I keep asking my question, and then I go to the right place. I go to Melissa Parker. Now, I had already set aside a day to spend in Nashville at the State Archives to see if I could track down this connection of Sam Houston with Houston County. But before I went, I said, Melissa, do you know about the history of the name of this county? And she said no, but I will get in touch with the State Archives. You wouldn't think that this letter would make me so happy. It made me so happy. And here's what it says. Dear Melissa Barker, it came back within a day or two. It's the kind of thing that makes you believe in government, you know. Houston County was created by Chapter 46 of the 1870-71 Acts of Tennessee And you can find that by going to this section 1. And it says that it will be known and designated by the name of Houston, but does not say why. And so our good researchers, Melissa's colleagues at the State Archives, I don't know how long it took them to do it, but they searched the House of Representatives Journal, the Senate Journal. They hoped to find discussions when this act was, when the county was created, about why the name. They never could find it. All they could find was a simple counting of the votes to pass the bill to create Houston County. But they didn't stop there. They kept going and found that in a state report in 1874 that Houston County was named after Sam Houston. So that's the first inscribed reference we have to Sam Houston. And then later, in an article in the Nashville American in June of 1904, there is an extensive description of Sam Houston and how this county was named for him. So, friends, I don't know how many Irish people settled in Houston County. Was it a bunch? I don't know. I heard it wasn't very many. In fact, I've seen the census reports, and there were not many Irish here. But we do really well with Irish Day, don't we? We've done it for over 50 years. So I think, even though Sam Houston never came here, and there was a reason, you will learn soon enough, why it was 40-odd years after he was governor that we named a county for him, I think we could play catch-up and start doing something about Sam Houston in this county. What a man. Here's the deal. A quick reprise of his career will set out the context of this remarkable man. So he was born in 1793 in Rockbridge County, Virginia. His parents were, his father had fought in the Revolutionary War. His mother was well educated. His father, also named Sam Houston, gave 40 acres of land to start a school that came to be known as Liberty Hall, which eventually became Washington and Lee University. So there was an emphasis on education early on in that family, but the father died, and the widow with 9 children moved to East Tennessee near Maryville because the father had gotten a land grant for his service in the Revolution. That's how they came here and started a store. And Sam Houston, bless his heart, he was the 5th boy of 6, and there were 3 younger sisters. One source says he was a sorry student and a truant. And already I sort of felt attached to him. He just didn't like to be regimented. And so when he had to go to work as a clerk in the store, he started looking for a way out, and he had loved reading in his father's library, and he had discovered Homer. He had discovered Pope's translation of the Iliad, and he was intrigued, and the story is that he went to his teacher. He had 1 year of formal education and said, I want you to teach me Greek and Latin. I'd love to think they had an extensive program there in Houston County High School, but anyway, the teachers, he said, very well, I will leave here, I will go live with the Indians, with Chief Jolly and his tribe. Well, he didn't say where he was going, he just left. And they looked for weeks for him. He was 13, 14 years old, he was truant. And for most of 3 years with Chief Jolly, and was adopted into that tribe of Cherokees and was given the name Colonna, which is Cherokee for the raven. And finally, his brothers found him and said, "You've got to come back and run the store." And he said, "If I just have to tell you what he said. He said, "If I can't study Latin in the academy, I can at least read a translation from Greek in the woods and read it in peace." And he wouldn't leave. And the story is that he had memorized all 500 pages of Pope's translation of the Iliad. Now, you remember the Iliad. It's mostly about the Trojan War between the Greeks and the Trojans, between Hector and Achilles. And he must have been really smart. First of all, he had a great memory, obviously, and a great imagination. And he sort of envisioned himself as fighting in that heroic mode, which he ended up doing. Now, well, way led on to way, and so he joined the army at the age of 20, rose very quickly in the ranks, fought at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, where he was seriously wounded twice, and each time he had led a charge up against a fortified hill of, I think, the Creek Indians. Well, then he studied law, and in 6 months finished preparing for the law and was admitted to the bar, became district attorney in Nashville, elected to Congress in 1824, elected governor of Tennessee, I'll have to come back to that, in 1828, went to live with the Indians again and drank a lot. This was over in Arkansas, but he kept hearing about Texas, so he went to Texas, became commander-in-chief of the Texas Army, fought the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836, which defeated Santa Anna and forever ended Mexican claims to Texas. I'm not going to call that a land grab, but that's the way Texas came to be. Then he became the first president of Texas for 2 terms, fought hard to get Texas into the Union as a state in 1845. Oh, he also served in Congress when he was back in Tennessee. Then a U.S. Senator in 1854, and again elected governor of Texas in 1860. Now, all of that to say what I'm about to read. Which office of all of those afforded him the greatest pride? He said it was teaching. That, I didn't even tell you, he started a little school for 1 year to pay off his debts over in Maryville, and you can still see that schoolhouse. He said, "With this emblem of ornament of authority in my hand," he had a little stick he had carved, "dressed in a hunting shirt of flowered calico, a long queue of hair down my back, with the sense of authority over my pupils, I experienced a higher feeling of dignity and self-satisfaction than from any other office I ever held." So, in this story, I have identified 3 personality traits of Sam Houston and 3 character traits. And to make the distinction, I will tell you that in among the ancient Greeks at least, in the performances in the theater, they were always masked. The actors wore masks, and they had a hole for the mouth, and they would speak through the hole, and then they could take another mask for another play. And speaking through the hole in Latin is per sona. The sound comes through, and personality comes from the presentation we make through our masks. And so I think of personality as sort of acquired traits. You know, Jerry's funny, Melissa is passionate, and every one of you has personality traits that we identify with you. And with Houston, I would say those are curiosity, affability. He was a natural leader. If he walked in this room right now, he would fill the room with his presence. And finally, a sense of humor. So those would be the personality traits you'll see in the remarks I make. The character traits I would identify as courage, empathy, and honor. Are we born with those? Sometimes I think we are. Sometimes, at least the ancient Greeks thought we inherited these character traits through our, we would now say our DNA. Probably we're raised up by those who honor them. Courage, empathy, and honor. Courage you do usually in public. Sam Houston was courageous at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, where he led his troops up into the danger zone. I think he was courageous in another battle that he didn't fight much later for 6 weeks. And now we fast forward for a moment to Texas, the Alamo. He was not at the Alamo. My younger brother did not have a sense of humor. And when he heard the joke one time that there would be no state of Texas if the Alamo had a back door, he did not laugh. So you remember what happened there with our Davy Crockett and our other Tennesseans. By the way, it was mostly Tennesseans who died there. And after that, people born in Britain. So we go back with this connection. Houston wasn't there. He was leading the Texas Army. So we had, I mean, it was a massacre. You know, they killed everyone in there. And the Texans were enraged. You have got to retaliate right now against this outrage. And Houston took his army down away from there, and he started recruiting other fighters and training them. And the rage at him for not retaliating instantly rose. This went on for 6 weeks. And then Santa Anna, with his army, was down in San Jacinto somewhere on the Gulf Coast. And Houston knew he was there, and he led his troops up to them. And while they were having their siesta one afternoon, he defeated Santa Anna and his whole army. That was on April 19th, after the Alamo had fallen on March 6th in 1836. So sometimes it takes courage not to fight yet. I'll say a little bit about honor and then come back to these personality traits. There's a Dr. Pepper machine over there. And let's say it's a candy bar machine, because my story works better with candy bars than with carbonated drinks in cans. Honor you can do all by yourself. Courage you do in public. Courage is what is required in the public realm. Honor is private. So let's say that it's 50, 60 years ago and candy bars cost a nickel. Does anyone here remember that? You could get a Milky Way for a nickel. And let's say that everybody's gone from here except, let's just say Paul's still here. He's the mayor, and he, sort of watching over things, and this is his office space. So he decides he needs a Milky Way to get him through the rest of the evening. So he goes over and puts his nickel in the machine, and 2 candy bars come out. What does Paul do? A person of honor takes one of the candy bars, puts it on top of the machine, and walks out and eats his other. That's what I mean, that honor is private. Honor is what you do when no one's looking. And Houston's sense of honor was profound. We'll see that especially in what happened after his marriage in Tennessee, which was his first marriage. But I want to come back to the personality traits of affability and humor before I go on. Okay, affability. In his case, he was a natural leader. He always was. He loved to talk. He was an excellent writer. Boy, I think you study the Iliad and it'll really equip you to be governor of 2 states and president of 1, and make incredible speeches in the Senate of the United States. Well, he was affable, all right. Miss Ann Hannah, who is identified as a belle of old Nashville, says 2 classes of people pursued Houston all his life: artists and women. And in fact, one time I saw years later a campaign poster for Houston. I think he was running for governor again in Texas in 1860. And where it is and what goes on at the bottom, it says, "The ladies are especially invited." He was sort of a show-off. He liked fancy dress. He, in fact, had been a member of the dramatic club in Nashville. And if we have to go to the Renaissance Center for performances now, he'd be there. One time he was representing the Indians and went up to Washington to represent their interests dressed in Native American garb. The city of Washington was not impressed. He just didn't care. Well, the humor. I think one of my hopes for anyone in public life is a sense of humor. Sense of humor means you know that you're not God, that things are going to go wrong, that Mayor Paul might wear a really ridiculous glittery green tie for Irish Day, that somehow we're all in this together. Okay, so I told you that Houston drank a lot in some parts of his life, and there may have been other things I don't know about that he did, but here's what happened. He never was baptized. Remember, he was out with the Indians. He liked the ways of the Indians better than the ways of the white man. And then his 3rd marriage, he married a very proper young woman from Mobile, Alabama. These Alabama women are always very proper. I've noticed that. And her father had been a Baptist minister, and she was determined that Houston would be baptized. So she kept on. Now, they had 8 children, and finally, when he was 61 years old, Houston agreed to be baptized. Now, I'll make a little aside here. I've been a little skeptical sometimes of intercultural marriages. You know, it's hard that way, and I know because I'm in one. I was raised a Methodist who married a Baptist. Now, what's the big issue? Especially when you have 2 little children. Infant baptism. Oh, no, no, no. You have to wait to be baptized until you're the age of reason, like 11. Okay. Well, Ashley, Wiltshire, I can tell you now, we need worry about this intercultural issue no more. Sam Houston was 61 years old when he was baptized, and I have proof right here, which I'm going to show you. Okay, so I was down at Baylor University to do something, and in the president's office was a painting, of which this is the print, of the baptism of Sam Houston. Okay, that's good. He's out in the water with his pastor, who was also the president of Baylor at the time. This was in 1854. And he finally agreed to his wife, Margaret, that he would do this. He goes to the pastor and says, "Pastor Burleson, I give you my hand for baptism, and with it I give you my wallet. 10%, I think is the going rate. So, Mr. Wilson says, fine, we'll do it on Sunday. The students at Baylor discover that this is going to happen. And so they go out on Saturday night. I'm sure they did not have any beer before they went, but somehow they worked up the idea of pulling the prank of filling up the baptismal pond with brush and branches, trees. And so they go out the next morning and he can't be baptized in the pond. So the pastor takes Houston down to the nearest creek and he lowers him into the water and he raises him up and says, General Houston, your sins are washed away. And Houston says, Lord, save the fishes. Now, I'm going to leave this here at the disposal of the Historical Society. I don't care where it goes. I hope it'll be somewhere. It occurred to me, maybe it should be at the Baptist church, since it's doing baptism. That'll be up to you all. I'm not taking it. And so again, that kind of ability to wear the world as a light garment, even though he was fiercely patriotic and fiercely committed to the Union and to honor. Now, I guess we better go back to those marriages. I want to emphasize what he did here in Tennessee mostly. So he comes back from war, he becomes the lawyer, and one thing he does that I so appreciate, he put an ad in the Lebanon newspaper, that's where his first office was, announcing that he had opened his office, and he gives his hours, and then he says, I will be where I say I will be. That's honorable, to keep good office hours. Okay. Well, he's now 35, and he is very eligible. I mean, here he is with all this resume, and he's handsome and tall and affable, and he meets a young woman from Gallatin, Tennessee, which is, I don't know, just north of Nashville somewhere, from a very nice family, and her name is Eliza Allen. Did I say she's 18? Okay, so they get married. They get married on January, and the dates sort of matter here. You'll see why. January 22nd of 1829. On April 6th, January, February, March, April. Less than 4 months later, Houston resigns from the governorship, goes down in the middle of the night to the Cumberland River, gets on a steamboat, and leaves. We do not know what happened. But I will tell you first that Ashley and I, not so many years ago, were at a law dinner of some kind, and at our table was a couple from Gallatin, Tennessee. And I said, oh yes, Sam Houston married a woman from there. And the sound went out of the room. A sneer came on her face, and she said, we don't talk about him in Gallatin. What happened was that she fled home to her parents. Her brothers came after Sam Houston, and I don't know. What I think, and I'll tell you why I think it, what I think, we do know that she was in love with someone else when her family encouraged her to marry the governor. And maybe he found her with him, I just don't know. Some people said, well, his wounds from Horseshoe Bend hadn't healed and that was disgusting to her. I don't know. What I do know is that he never commented ever again in his life about that separation or about that woman and did not permit anyone, even in his own family, from ever speaking ill of her. And I think that whatever was the reason, his sense of honor was that he would not allow her to be besmirched, even if he were somehow responsible. That's why it took 43 years or whatever for us to name a county after Sam Houston. Well, he goes on to the Indians again and starts hearing about Texas. Oh, but not before he marries again. Let's talk about Diana Rogers. Well, she was a Cherokee. She was a Cherokee out there with the wigwam Neosho, where Houston went to live again with the Indians after he skedaddled from Nashville. She was a Cherokee, a widow of a white blacksmith, a woman whose father was a Scottish trader with the Indians, white. Her mother was 7/8 white, so she was 1/16 Cherokee. Now, I don't know about miscegenation laws among the Indians. By the way, we know there was much more miscegenation between whites and Native Americans than anybody knows. And, but she was the beloved niece of the chief of the tribe. She was royalty and tall and attractive and apparently educated, and they had several children. So that was number 2. The story is that she could not get him to stop drinking. He's had some ups and downs in his life. So eventually he goes on to Texas and gets involved in the Army and becomes commander of the Army and eventually wins Texas independence in 1836. Well, now enter Margaret Lee. And I've already told you that her family did not approve of this marriage. By this time, he was 47, I think, and she was 21. And here he was, this rough guy from Texas with a sort of dubious past. But she was smitten, and so was he. The people around said this marriage will last a year. And it lasted till the end of his life, very happily, and with these children. Well, what else to say? Let's go back to honor. When he was in Congress in 1854, and twice, once when he was governor of Tennessee, and again when he was a senator from Texas now in the 1850s, he was considered a very likely prospect for president of the United States. He was a Southerner, but he had Union sympathies, he had white appeal, he was a great campaigner. And the catastrophe of the marriage and the resignation ended the first possible place for him to succeed his mentor and good friend, Andrew Jackson, as President of the United States. So now we're up to 1854. He's in Congress, he's in the Senate, and he opposes the Kansas-Nebraska bill. Now, what does that mean? I never learned what that was until I had to. And if you know, you get A in his course without even. I said that to a student one time. If anyone knows what the Fourth Amendment is, he gets an A. And the Third Amendment, he knew what it was. Anyway, that's another story. Don't make promises you're not prepared to keep. Kansas-Nebraska bill had to do with the extension of slavery. That's what it was. And the bill said, well, we don't care what happens in Kansas and Nebraska, we'll leave that to popular sovereignty. It was sort of an early states' rights. We'll let those people decide whether they want slavery or not. That was counter to the Missouri Compromise that had been worked out with Henry Clay and others, that slavery will not go north of whatever, the Mason-Dixon line or whatever. Sam Houston was one of two Southern senators. The other was Thomas Hart Benton from Missouri, who voted against the Kansas-Nebraska bill. And he said, if we allow this, it is going to lead to civil war over slavery. And it did. So he was prophetic about that. In spite of this, he gets reelected governor in 1860. Texas votes to secede from the Union while he is governor. He refuses to vacate his office, and they come in and bodily carry him out of the governor's office. He goes home to Huntsville. He gets ill, and on July 25th, 1863, he dies. His last words were Texas and Margaret. One of the best biographies of Sam Houston is one of the first. It's called The Raven by Marquis James. It won the Pulitzer Prize in 1929. And Marquis James concludes, Margaret asked God at his deathbed to make her children, men and women, worthy of their father. She took from her husband's finger a ring that Houston's mother, Elizabeth, had given to him 50 years earlier when he went off to war. Margaret held the ring so the children might see engraved on its inner surface the short creed that Elizabeth Houston said must forever shine in the conduct of her son. That word was honor. Thank you.
I'm speechless. Thank you.
I should say, are there any questions? And if there were, oh good, there is. I'm sorry, may I?
You might guess.
I want to know if he had anything to do with that first set of children.
That what?
First set of children after he,
Oh, from the Indians?
no, yes.
He didn't have much time with Eliza Allen.
But he had children by her, right?
No,
No.
not by the first
So-
one.
but
By the
the
Cherokee
second one,
wife,
by
he
the
did.
second one, okay.
And I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to that. And I hope he did, but I doubt it. I don't know.
What
That's a
ended
good question.
marriage to the second one?
What ended it?
His drinking.
Well, the drinking was the cause. There's some question. It was a formal ceremony in the Cherokee tradition. I doubt if there was a Baptist minister there to make it official in the laws of the state of Wiltshire. So, but
Did he
I
get
can-
a divorce from the first wife before he married?
oh, yes. A good question, because that was a legal marriage. And years later, I think she sued for divorce, years later. I know that he was devoted to his children with Margaret, and there are many of them still around, their descendants, and they, one of them, Jean Houston, is a great-granddaughter whom I know. There's bunches of them. I had hoped, but I'm not going to ask now, that you would ask me what his attitude toward the Indians was. And here he had this close familial relationship at the time Jackson was doing the removal. And the answer to that was he did what he could to make it easier for Chief Jolly's group. He got extra rations for them and helped them stay there longer. He couldn't stop it. He was opposed to slavery. He did have slaves because Margaret brought them to marriage from her Alabama family. I'll end with this story because it says something, I think, about Sam Houston, too. There was a man who had come from Alabama named Joshua, who had known Margaret since she was little. And he, in the Houston household, had many gifts. He was a very skillful blacksmith. So his services were sought around the community and beyond. And Sam Houston said to Joshua, keep all the money you make that you earn independently, which he did. When Houston died, here was this widow with now 7 children at home. Houston had left her a lot of land but no money. Joshua Houston comes to visit her to bring his condolences. And as he rises to leave, he takes a leather pouch out of his pocket, puts it on the table, and said, there are $2,000 in gold sovereigns in this purse, and I want you to take it for your needs. Well, she didn't. She was very moved, and she said, you take that and use that money to do what General Houston would have wanted for you, and that is to get a great education for your children. Thanks.
Very nice, very nice. Does anybody else have anything to bring up tonight before we close the meeting now? Everybody remember now, our next meeting is going to be May 12th. It's going to be on a Friday night at 6 p.m. It's well, we're furnishing barbecue, but everybody's supposed to bring a covered dish. And it's a great place to visit, especially with Alan and Netta down there in the old house, and the old farm, the old walnut tree. So it is a really nice, everybody's invited. And like I say, just bring a covered dish to go with the barbecue that we're going to provide. And everybody have a good night and be safe going home.
Bring your chair.
Yeah, bring